blind spot. And the way this shows up in business is really interesting. So I'll be in a boardroom and somebody will be in the hot seat and we'll be working on Joe's business and everybody in the room says the same thing. Joe, you need to do X, you need to let this person go, or you need to move in this direction, or you need to choose A, not B, or niche down in this area, or add a new product, or raise your prices, or whatever that might be. And everybody's saying it. Have you ever been in this situation? But the person just doesn't hear it. It just doesn't compute. And they've got a blind spot. So they can't see the solution. And that's why getting different perspectives from different business owners is so critical to try and expose your blind spots. Good morning. Good news. Yesterday we were talking about what your problems were. Today we're going to go about solving them, about finding the leverage point. But first, a little thought. Some of you, this is definitely a recap, but a worthy one, Lisa, one that we need to be reminded of. But for a couple of you, this is new. So this is how to have a really productive, effective, problem-solving, brainstorming type conversation. And I'll often share this in my mastermind groups, because if you come loaded with already convinced you know the answers, you're not going to find anything. So this actually dates back to 1955. It was a tool taught or used in psychology, and it's called Johari's window. So it's all really about effective communication. So Johari's window says, all right, if you've got two groups of people that are trying to communicate, so it applies, Anastasia, in any context, but I'm going to specifically apply it to business. Okay, so Joe, if we're having a conversation with Joe about her business, okay, we as a collective are listening to her. So there are certain things that we see. And when I say see, I mean we're consciously aware of. So there's certain facts that we see that we're aware of. And there is certain information that Joe's got that we don't. So there are things that we don't see, i.e. she's not shared with us. So the context, Paul, is if Joe's saying, look, I've got this problem, can you help me with it? Okay, well, there's certain stuff that we know and there's certain stuff that we don't know. But to complete the kind of quadrants, the stuff that Joe sees, as in she's aware of, and then the stuff that she doesn't see. Okay, so you end up with kind of 4 quadrants. And if the stuff that up here in this top right, the stuff that if Joe's not aware of it and we're not aware of it, this is the unknown. We can't have any productive conversation. Can't have any productive conversation if we're not aware of it and she's not aware of it. Make sense? Down in this quadrant is the arena, right? This is where we can have an open conversation, i.e. it's on the table, South. We can now productively talk about, all right, this is what this means. We can have the debate because all the facts are on the table and we can discuss, debate and share. But that's not the most interesting part. The most interesting part, David, or where the opportunity, or you could say where the leverage point, the opportunity to have better quality conversation comes from, is from understanding these other 2 areas. So if there's stuff Joe sees, but we don't see it, what is that? How would you describe that? What is it? So Joe's aware of some information. So we're working on Joe's business. We're trying to solve her problem. We're trying to figure out the leverage point that's going to change everything. But the stuff that she's got that we're not aware of, that is her mask. That is her mask. And or another word for that, Paul, would be ego. That's what it's like, I'm not... I don't really want to share this, so I will either not share it or I'll obfuscate. Or I'll outright lie. Was that a laugh of recognition, Lisa?
Maybe. I can neither confirm nor deny.
So, and then this top left quadrant, so this is stuff that Joe's not aware of, but we can all see it.
Blind spot.
That's her blind spot. And the way this shows up in business is really interesting. So I'll be in a boardroom and somebody will be in the hot seat and we'll be working on Joe's business and everybody in the room says the same thing. Joe, you need to do X, you need to let this person go, or you need to move in this direction, or you need to choose A, not B, or niche down in this area, or add a new product, or raise your prices, or whatever that might be. And everybody's saying it. Have you ever been in this situation? But the person just doesn't hear it. It just doesn't compute. And they've got a blind spot, so they can't see the solution. And that's why getting different perspectives from different business owners is so critical to try and expose your blind spots. However, in the context of Johari's window, how do you take that information, David, and actually turn it into a productive meeting so you don't just forever stay stuck on the hamster wheel? The key is to increase the size of the arena. So the question I've got for you is, how would you move this line across? So to increase the size of the arena, we can either move this line or we can move this line. So how do we move this line across? In other words, if it was Joe in the hot seat, how do we move this line across so that we see, the rest of us see more, so that we can help her? What has to happen?
Ask more questions, get more information.
Yeah, so we need to get more information. So what does Joe need to do? So in the context of, now you are Joe, I think you're in the hot seat, like what needs to happen so we can help Joe better? What does she need to do?
She needs to declare information.
She needs to declare, or the word I would use, or I think that the people for Johari's winner would, is disclose. Disclosure is critical. In other words, if you're not willing to be open, to be transparent, it's really difficult to help you. And to the degree that you're more guarded, it's inversely proportional to the quality of outcome in the session. So a way to think about this, Suzanne, is whatever you feel most difficult about, whatever you feel most stuck on, whatever you feel most embarrassed about, that are hoping that we don't ask you about, that's often a good place to start. So sometimes I'll sit in a session and we'll be there for 90 minutes. And the session will be okay. And then at the very end, the person, because they've gradually felt more comfortable, Paula, will eventually go, oh yeah, by the way, just one other thing. And all of a sudden it'll unlock Anastasia, like never-ending opportunities, options. And I think, for fuck's sake, like we should have started there 90 minutes ago. Because we were solving the wrong problem because the information wasn't disclosed. So, two keys. Key number one, disclosure. i.e. the more you can share the facts transparently, and especially if you find yourself wanting to hide or mask over certain facts because you don't want to be asked about it, often that's where your leverage point will be. But the other axis, how do we move this axis up? In other words, back into the example of Joe, if Joe's in the hot seat, and she's been really good at being open and kind of disclosing the information, so we now know more information to increase the size of this arena. What has to happen so that she reduces her blind spot? How can she stack the deck in her favor so she's got fewer blind spots? In other words, so she sees more. Because people often come in, Suzanne, going, yeah, I want the answers. I want to know the answers.
Be receiving and not defensive.
I was going to say, I don't know why I'm looking at Lisa again. It's too early in the day for this.
Too early, my coffee's not kicked in. Listening.
The key is they've got to be willing to listen. In other words, let's use a different context. Let's say we're brainstorming on Joe's problem. We've got some really good ideas, and in this room full of smart, switched-on business owners, to my awareness, nobody in this room has got interest in any other business other than their own in this room. So if we're trying to contribute ideas to help solve Joe's problem, to help her find a leverage point, the intent's good. Doesn't mean all the ideas are good. In fact, some of them are bad. Way to have good ideas, have lots of ideas. Okay, but if Joe's not open, it's not going to help. If a cup's already full, so to speak, it's not going to help. And then the real irony is, if David's trying to share an idea with Joe that he feels is really good and powerful, and Joe doesn't like the idea, we're now back to that point of going, well, is it a good idea or not? No, it's a bad idea, and Joe's correctly assessing it's a bad idea, so she's trying to dismiss it. Or no, it's a good idea, but she's got a blind spot and she's resistant to it, and it's actually the very thing she needs in order to transform. Well, we don't know. But the irony is, in trying to push off David's idea, what happens? Two things happen that are bad. Anastasia, one is, if you get your idea rejected and you think it's a really good idea, what does the person with the idea tend to want to do?
Shut down.
No, well, there's one of two. Well, that's the second. The first one in mind is they tend to push forward. So if Joe goes, yeah, dismissively, no, yeah, thanks, David, yeah, whatever, yeah, I've tried that. Often they'll try and push more, and then you get more resistance, and it becomes more awkward and stilted, and then eventually, Lisa, or sometimes immediately, the person shuts down and goes, well, there's no point bloody telling her ideas, because she's not going to listen anyway. So, Paula, if you want to have a good ideas flow, if you want to benefit, bear in mind, if you already had solved the problem, you wouldn't be presenting the problem. So you've got to be open to ideas coming externally, and the more open you are, the more ideas you'll get. Not every idea is going to be a good one, but if you're not open to it, it's going to shut it down. So the best way to keep the ideas flowing, Joe, is to go, even if David's coming with the worst idea in the world, is go, thanks, David, good one. I'll write that one down. And then the ideas keep flowing. So side anecdote, you might have seen this. So singer-songwriter Ed Sheeran, one of the biggest artists in the world at the moment. And I saw an interview he did when he was talking about songwriting. And he said, simply put, he said, yeah, like to get to a good song, you have to write the bad ones. Often the bad ones, but if you don't write them out anyway, they get stuck. So he goes, what you've got to do is just keep writing, even if it's terrible. And I thought, I love that. It's like you've got to get it out of your system, because then that allows the good ones to flow through. And I'm like, yep. And then, by the way, if you look at his number of songs, and this is true for almost any musical artist, if you look at the number of songs that they've written, even people like the Beatles, Elton John, you'll find that it's like 5% of their songs are their hits, 95%, and these are the most successful artists in history. And 19 out of 20, so-so. And they're the ones that got released. That's not the ones that they wrote that never even got recorded, because they thought it was so bad they couldn't even bring themselves to record it. So in this environment, it's like you've got to let the ideas flow. Okay. And the key to keep them flowing, Joe, even if it was a bad idea, is, great, thank you. Don't resist it. So you've got to be willing to disclose, and you've got to be willing to listen. That's Johari's window. So in this room, okay, when we get into the hot seating and going through your problems today, the true root core problems, and trying to find leverage points, okay, disclose. And if we ask questions, give us answers to the questions, and be willing to listen.